Hello everyone, I'm going to try to orient you so that you can navigate your way around Photoshop. I'm using CS5 and CS4 is going to be very similar to CS5. What's located over here on the left hand side, and you'll notice that my mouse cursor has a big purple circle around it so that you have an idea of where my mouse actually is at all times. So located on the left hand side is going to be the tool palette. And a lot of these tools are going to be things like the marquee tool that we'll be using, the lasso tool that we'll be using, the crop tool. We're going to be using the healing brush and the clone stamp. We're going to be using the regular brush. We're never going to use the eraser. The eraser results in destructive editing, and we're always going to use non-destructive editing. We won't be using the text tool, but the text tool is located here. And a lot of these tools, if you right-click on these tools, you get additional information. So within each of the tools is actually sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 different tools. So if you right-click, for example, on this particular tool here, it is the sponge tool, the burn tool, and the dodge tool. If you click on this up here, you have the spot healing brush, the patch tool, and a red eye tool. So keep in mind that some of these tools are indeed a little bit buried. The other thing I wanted to show you is down here at the bottom. This is your foreground color and your background color. And you can switch between these by clicking on this little arrow here. This is one of the few shortcuts that I really do recommend that you learn. On your keyboard, if you press the X key, it will automatically switch between the black and the white. So if you look over here, I'm on my keyboard now and I'm switching back and forth between white and black using the X key. This is going to be something that's very important when we talk about masking. You're going to constantly be using the black and the white paintbrush, and I'll talk about that a little bit later when we actually start talking about masking. But just orient yourself about this toolbar. One of the other nice things about this toolbar is that this bar at the top is a context-aware bar. So if I click on the marquee tool, this changes up here. If I click on the lasso tool or the crop tool or the clone stamp, whatever I'm clicking on, this bar up here changes. So that kind of gives you some additional choices for each one of the tools that you're actually going to click on. The other thing you'll notice is that I have on my right hand side a lot of my palettes set up. Some of the palettes that I use every day are the history palette, the adjustments palette, the layers palette. Those 3 I use every single day. How you get to those is you go up to window and you can basically click on the palettes that you want available. Right now we have the navigation palette, the histogram palette, the information palette, we have mini bridge open, the history palette, the action palette, which is more of an advanced Photoshop. It enables you to basically things that you do over and over and over again. It enables you to write a little action and it'll automatically do that for you. But that's more of an advanced feature. The adjustments, the layers, channels, and masks. Now I've spent a little bit of time and I've arranged my palettes over here on the right hand side to be just the way that I like them. So one of the things that you can do is after you get things the way that you like them, you can actually go up to Workspace and you can actually save your new workspace so that any point in time you can get back to this particular spot. This is something that's useful if you spend a little bit of time, you get everything just the way that you want it to. If things change in the future, you can actually just go back and automatically click on this and get your palettes back up the way that you want to be set back up. I don't tend to use Mini Bridge a lot. I still use a program called Breeze Browser. I find it's a wonderful program. It's a fast program. I do use Lightroom, but I find that Breeze Browser is still faster. I can very easily go back and forth between Breeze Browser and Photoshop. Everybody has to decide on their own. Do you want to go up to the file open? Do you want to browse in Bridge, browse in Mini Bridge? Do you want to use Lightroom? Do you want to use Breeze Browser? That's kind of an individual choice that people have to make. If all you're doing right now is opening up individual pictures one at a time, file open just like any other Windows program or any other program on your computer. This is a pretty standard that you have your file open, save as, you have your minimize and maximize buttons. These are standard buttons on all programs. So however you prefer to open your images. I don't tend to do file open most of the time because I'm working oftentimes on large numbers of images. If I've done a wedding, a portrait session, I've come back from a photo shoot, I have a large number of images, so I prefer to kind of work either in Breeze Browser or Bridge or Mini Bridge. I do use Lightroom, but we're talking today just about Photoshop. So you can click on any of these at any time and you can have them appear. If by some chance you close them out. You click on one of these X's and close them out. You can go back up to Windows at any point in time and have them actually reappear. So just be aware that you can actually see them. Under your layers palette, we're going to now be starting to talk about how to work with layers. So your layers palette over here is going to have some controls. You can actually delete the layer, you can make a new layer, you can apply adjustments to that layer, you can apply effects to that layer, you can apply a mask to that layer. So the layer palette is going to be something that you're going to be using a lot. The history palette is also going to be something useful. As you open up an image, it's going to record all of the steps that you took for that particular image. You can also at any point in time take a picture. So you can actually take a little picture of all the steps at that point in time. And then say you do a little bit of editing and you're not sure if you like what you see, you can actually go back to that point in time using that little camera, the picture that Photoshop actually took during that particular point in time. And then we're going to also talk about the adjustment layers. Adjustment layers are basically mathematical formulas that are applied to the pixels on your image. They can make it black and white or lighter or darker, change a color balance. They can do certain things in your image. So adjustment layers are going to be very critical. So this kind of orients you about Photoshop itself. Again, the tools over here on the left, the tools changing as you click on each of the tools. This menu bar up here is context sensitive, so it knows what you're clicking on, so it's going to make changes based on what tool you have selected. And then you have to have a choice of what palettes that you want available over here. Like I said, I always have history, adjustments, and layers. That would be a minimum of 3 palettes that I would have open at all times. So this is a little way of getting you started with Photoshop. Photoshop is, a difficult program to use. It is something that there's no way that you can learn everything about Photoshop. You have to take it a little bite at a time. So learn one of these tools, practice with it, learn another one of the tools, practice with it, and if you take it bite by bite, Photoshop becomes much more manageable. And we're going to talk a little bit about layers, which are really the heart of Photoshop, and we're going to talk about masks, which are really the soul of Photoshop. So we're going to explore each one of those on its own separate video. Thank you. See you later.